with little events like this, sharing your success and gaining confidence. We're all about empowering one another. Something really unique as well is working through a program gets you a certificate for nonprofit board certification. So Julie and I received that last spring. This gives you a chance to sit on a nonprofit board. I also sit on WELD's National Advisory Council, so it's something really exciting to be a part of. It's a really great way to stay impactful in your community and get to know people around you. If this is something you're interested in and you really want to make an impact or gain that confidence or different skills, we can put Julia's email in the chat box. If you want to email her either during the event, after the event, and let us know, we can send you more information as well. So we have a awesome speaker with us today. Her name is Lourdes. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing this best I can. Barrosso de Padilla. And she's gonna speak to you guys today about being impactful for this coming year.
Thanks, Karis. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lourdes Barrosso de Padilla. I'm gonna cheat because I said it all in Spanish, Karis. So unless you are fluent in Spanish, it might be a name that you struggle with. We have all the double letters and all the sounds in our name, in our Spanish in general. So first, I want to say I never apologize for my children. I always just let their presence be known. So you may see a child walk in. I've already warned them that I was on a call, but who knows? Or a dog or someone at the front door. We're all living in each other's lives for real. So I want to, whatever may happen in your house right now, I totally understand. So before I start, I want to say thank you. This is a crazy time that we are living in, and everybody talks about being zoomed out, which I think is funny because I feel like we have very little choices but to see each other in boxes like this. So it's either this or nothing, and I'll choose this any day of the week. But I do know that it is a lot, and I always thank people when they give me their time. It's the most precious commodity that we have, and especially at a time where, you know, it's later in the day, folks have had a long day, you've been dealing with a lot. So I want to thank you. I also want to, for just a second, name where we are. I think it's a little jarring for me sometimes when we walk into a space or a meeting and we don't honor the space and the time that we're currently in, right? We are in the middle of a beginning, end, where are we in this what is time? We are in a global pandemic that is affecting all of us in different ways, right? People feel different levels of comfortability. They're connected to their people and their villages in some ways, or disconnected from them in some ways that can be challenging. I feel like this moment in time kind of reminds me of a mourning period after you lose someone or something that you love, right? We've all lost someone, something that we love, and we go through this period of mourning where it is trying to wrap your head around the loss, trying to understand how to deal with the feelings that you have, and then trying to understand the long-term effects of what this means and what a new reality is without this person or this thing, right? And so whether you're grieving what feels like something small, like milestones in your life or someone else's life, or someone's wedding got postponed, or, you know, graduation was missed, or a big trip was canceled, or quite literally mourning a person, or anywhere in between, it's a difficult time. And then we layer on top of that a social justice reckoning, which for everyone, they're dealing with it differently, right? As a woman of color, I feel like I've been dealing with it since I can remember. For some people, if they've been steeped in just social justice work, they have a level of understanding. And for some people, they're beginning to understand and they're beginning to learn, right? And then on top of that social justice reckoning, we are talking about a political climate that is it goes far beyond what your politics are, and far beyond anything that we've seen before. We've come to a place where it is no longer about, a set of political beliefs that once formed political parties, which some would argue there were more intentions behind that than just political beliefs, but that we are literally on different sides of issues that are tearing communities, families, relationships apart, right? And then today, where Breonna Taylor, of the officers, of the 3 officers that we knew were involved, only one of them were indicted on a charge that carries anything between 1 to 5 years. And whatever your knowledge is about the situation, my hope is that people see the injustice in that, and that have an understanding that justice is a fickle thing, my friends, right? And it doesn't work for everyone all the time. So we're dealing with all of these things on a day-to-day basis. It's part of what we are breathing in and taking in. And at a time where some of you, whether you're in your first year, third year, fourth year, this year is probably not what you expected. And I often say that expectation is a one-way road to disappointment because everybody will disappoint you. Your bank account, your marriage, your waistline is never going to be the thing you expect it to be, right? And you got to work real, real hard for it to even get close to that. And there's only but so much of that you actually have within your control. And so I want to honor that we're all feeling that, and we're coming into this space together, feeling the effects of all the things that I talked about at different levels. And our understanding of that is at different levels. How this is weighing on our hearts, on our minds, and our souls is totally different for everyone, right? And so what I asked us to do in this space today is that I asked us to understand that, and to understand that that's what people are coming into the space with, and to give everyone grace for being in that space and for their understanding of that. I want to believe that in order, like there's lots of like rhetoric out there, and we talk about people coming together and how do we come back together as a community, as a nation. To me, there has to be some level of understanding and some openness to giving people at least a certain measure of grace. Not everyone will deserve it. Not everyone will deserve it all the time, but I think that that measure of grace is important. So I wanted to start off there because I think that it's important in this conversation, when I talk to folks about what I should talk about this evening with all of you, what would be helpful. We talked about resiliency, and it's interesting because resiliency to me, I think that sometimes is something that people are inherently born with, right? But it's a muscle that you continuously need to build and work at. And it does not come easy for everyone. And the same way that some of us will go to the gym and we get faster, stronger, and we can push ourselves further, some of us, when it comes to resiliency, are the same way. And there's also things that hold us back from being resilient, right? And how do you find that? And how do you find joy and purpose at a time where it feels very, very difficult to look for that? It's interesting because kids are such a blessing because they are so like pure in nature. And so being a parent, I think especially at this time, I feel incredibly fortunate that, their perspective of the world and their like pure heartedness when it comes to certain things is the place where I find joy on a consistent basis, and a place where I find meaning often. And so, so thinking along those themes, I want to share some ideas and some stories with you, and then I'm going to end and then open it up for some questions. And just be able to have a conversation together, right? So I will tell you I think some of you may have seen my bio, just to give you a little context for who I am. I am first generation American. My parents were born and raised in Cuba, Cuba, and my sisters were born there as well. My family came to America shortly after the revolution in Cuba. And it's interesting, there's a quote by a famous Cuban philosopher, his name is Jose Marti, and he says that freedom is like air and water to people. Like he said men, but we're going to open it up to people. They will run to it. They will look for it the same way that they seek air and water. You need it to live, right? And so my father firmly believed this. I had two uncles that went to jail as political prisoners after the Castro regime took over. And so my dad, his form of protest and his form of thinking about his family and giving them better opportunities was to leave the country. And so they went to Miami because this might seem shocking to you. There's not a pipeline of Cubans coming from Cuba to Columbus, Ohio, especially in the 70s. So they did what every immigrant and refugee does, right? They knew somebody. So my mom knew a woman from her town who lived here, who had a beauty shop. She was married to an American. She said to my mom, come here. It's a great place to live. It's super affordable. And so my parents came. My mom washed hair for a quarter a head and learned English by watching soap operas, which explains so much about my mother. And then my father was a busboy at a Polynesian-themed restaurant called Kahiki. Some of you, if you know Columbus history, might have heard of it. And my poor parents moved here like right before the winter. I don't know how they didn't hightail it out of here after that. But my dad used to walk. If some of you, for reference point, there was a housing project by the airport. It was actually built across from DCSC. And my parents lived there, and they used to walk from Greenbrier, which is basically near the airport, to the Kahiki. My dad would walk in the snow in these leather shoes that he wore in his busboy uniform with some white pants and a Polynesian shirt and a little leather jacket that somebody gave him. Bless his little heart. So, we grew up over here on the east side. I was born 6 years after my parents came to America. They signed a lease. They didn't understand how leases worked, so we just stayed. This became home. And by the time they realized they had options to move, they felt centered here and built a community. And my father had the equivalent of an 8th grade education. But what he did have, that's formal education. That's like what we call education, right? Like he went to school up until that time, but he read. He was an avid reader, and he read books, and he got really smart, and he was a good businessman, and he opened up his own store. So I grew up with a little bodega that my dad opened up on the east side on the edge of Columbus and Whitehall called Tropical Food Market. It was my after school program, my summer camp, our everything. We spent so much time at the store. My dad built a back room so that we could have dinner there, and there was a cot so I could take naps. And that's where I learned about community and following your passion. You know, my dad didn't understand that like things were stacked against him, or he shouldn't be doing this, or we didn't have enough money. We literally paid for our bills out of the till from that cash register every day. I learned about your family are the people who you invite in, right? They're not always just the people who are born into your family, but they are the community that supports you, and they're the people around you that support you during this time. You know, it blows my mind every time I think about the fact that my parents came to this country with literally like $20, a couple outfits a piece, and like this much English, right? Who would do that? Like who, like if I said to you right now, pack your bags, you're going to China, like that is a difficult proposition, right? And, you know, and what boggles my mind is just not, it wasn't like this is something that happened in the olden days, because we talk about the founding of this country in that way. People still do this today, right? Like they still come here today. They still leave everything they know. They leave their language and their culture, and they come here. And you know, they work hard and they sacrifice so much. I run a program called the Latina Mentoring Academy, which is a professional development organization for Latinas in Central Ohio, because we started the program because we inherently knew two things. One, Latinas are the biggest segment of entrepreneurs in the country of Latinos. So think about the millions of Latinos in the world, right? And I want to be clear. 1 out of 5 kindergartners today are Latinos. when, you know how they said like a few years back when like J-Lo got really big and they were like, it's a Latino explosion. I was like, you ain't seen nothing yet. That was just a Latino firecracker. The explosion's coming. But if you think of like all the Latinos, women are leading the way, right? So we understood that. And then we also understood that there's many programs that are focused for men, which is why WELD is around, right? And so we started this program because we were bleeding Latina talent in this city. Women who were doctors, lawyers, engineers, you know, who might not have language attainment, some of them who do, but just want to understand, like, I come from this culture and I don't want to give that up when I show up in the workplace, and you don't have to, but no one gave them permission or told them that they didn't have to, or their accent is not actually a deficit, but it actually adds value, and that's okay. And you can show up as your most authentic self. And so they go through professional development. They're paired with a Latina mentor. And I have met women through LMA who, you know, like me, might be first generation American. I've met women who literally, when they were 13 years old, crossed the desert by themselves, who had, whatever your political view is, put that aside for just a second. Let's just talk about human spirit. That her mother was here and working. She wanted to be with her mother, and at 13 saved up enough money to have someone help her across a desert that was so hot that it melted the bottom of her shoes, and she had to take fabric and wrap it around her feet to come here. When I think about people who, you are leaving something behind that is so terrible that you are facing anything, could be death, could be like, you have no guarantees on the other side of the journey that you're going through, right? But that in your mind, that you have the fortitude to push through that, for the opportunity at a better chance. When we talk about resiliency, that's what I'm talking about, right? About that resiliency to push through, to have an opportunity on the other side of something that is better than where you are. And so when I think about now, when I think about, you know, I think about, to me, this, I started with the story of my parents because they instilled in me this level, this belief in democracy, this belief in justice that runs very deep for me. But then also that sacrifice, and I wasn't around, right? Like I wasn't even a glimmer in their eye. I was not even an option then, right? Like they thought, I have 2 kids, we're going to America, this is it. And then I was a surprise. And so, but for me, the biggest payback for them is that I use every opportunity that I have, right? So what are the opportunities that come to me? And I don't just mean the big opportunities, I mean those small opportunities too, right? Like I woke up today, that was an opportunity. I'm here with all of you, that is an opportunity, right? It's about changing your framework of like, what are the opportunities that I am given, and how am I going to use that to advance, to not only thank them and show gratitude, but to advance the things that I believe are just and true, right? You know, I believe in the safety of for everyone. I believe in justice for everyone. And I want to work to create a place where that is true for each and every single one of us. And so how do I do that, right? I started working at the organization that I've worked at now for this is going on my 26th year, at City Year. And I started as a young person. I started as a 17-year-old who graduated from high school by the hair on her chinny chin chin, because my friends, that was a time when I looked for more of the fun opportunities instead of the good opportunities. And so I joined this organization, City Year, and it broadened my horizons to the possibility of what one person could do. As a young person, I turned 18 my core year, my service year, and I moved to San Antonio, Texas to like help start up City Year in San Antonio. And it was the first time that I was surrounded by people who look like me. It was the first time that I was surrounded by people who shared a culture like me. And I was given an incredible amount of responsibility to recruit other young people to come and do a year of service, to figure out what were the different service projects that we should do, where we should invest our time. You know, I saw a housing project on this side of the street and a school on this side of the street that didn't even talk to each other, right? And we knew that a good majority of the kids at this school lived in this housing project. And so as an 18-year-old, I was like, well, why don't you just come together? I didn't know enough to think maybe there was a reason as to why, right? I just thought you two should be at the table, right? And so that same curiosity as a young person of like not having the not understanding or having the perspective, I've tried to keep a little bit of that, to always question and ask why. Why can't we do this? Who cares if everybody else tried it? Why can't we try it a different way? Why can't we have this conversation? What can we do when we come to the table, right? And so I started to understand, when you have that person, and it doesn't always need to be me, it could be someone else, when you have that person who's pushing and asking the why, right? And bringing people to the table, the power within that. I also started to understand City Year is a deliberately diverse organization. That means that we recruit young people from the ages of 17 to 25 to commit to a year of full-time community service, and you get money for college. It's an AmeriCorps program. And the values of City Year, where we're bringing different people to the table to have a conversation together, that it helps to break down social barriers. I started this conversation by saying having grace. When I was a Corps member, that's what we call our young people, on my one team, I had just graduated from high school. We had a girl from who was Asian who graduated from a prep school in Dallas. We had an ex-gang member from San Jose, California. We had a guy who was Mexican American who had gone to Stanford and was the first person in his family to graduate from college, and a Rastafarian from South Carolina who was the first person who went to Harvard and was the first person in his family to graduate from college. We had a kid who had gotten his GED while he was at City Year. His name was John Saletti, and John Saletti used to live in South Boston, which was like a huge, this is where a lot of riots were happening in Boston during busing. And John himself would say that before he came to City Year, that he was like a hardcore racist. And through his experiences at City Year, just started to understand how he was, how he was brought up and what he believed to be true, and started to unlearn those things just by being on our team and working together, right? And so we were put on this team and we had to figure things out, and we had to talk to each other, and we had to work through our differences with a lot of support and guardrails around to do that. But what was most important to us was the kids that we were serving and the communities that we were serving. And so that idea of coming together and having these different perspectives was something that I've always taken with me into every conversation that I've had. That's why I love, even though I can't see all of your beautiful faces, I see all your beautiful names, and I see that they come from different cultures and different places. And so this is the best of us, right? And how do we continue to have these conversations with love and with grace, and with this idea of service in mind, this idea that we all want to be better and we want to push towards that. And so as I'm looking at the clock, and I want to leave time for questions, and I know I kind of was everywhere because we didn't have a lot of time today, but I want to just drive home a couple points. Even in your house, you can make change, right? I think that sometimes when we think of change, RIP, RBG, like when we think about someone like that who is so iconic, who did so much for women, who did so much in this country, who literally helped to change the face of this country, right? I think that we sometimes hold change way up here. Change can be changing the mind of your neighbor. Change can be, after the protests downtown, I started to see some things on our Facebook page, or our neighborhood Facebook page, and had a conversation with one of our neighbors, and we started to have like these reconciliation conversations in our neighborhood, right? That can create change. It's just creating opportunities for people. Change does not always have to be, I'm gonna first of all, we need people who are going to change the system. So if that's your goal, keep on doing that. But we also, sometimes it's the small incremental changes, right? I'm sure you've all heard that starfish story of there was a little girl walking along a beach, and she saw starfish swimming up, or she saw starfish had come up on the edge of the beach, and she was looking at all these starfish. She stopped, she took one, she picked it up, and she threw it back out into the ocean. And a man said, "What are you doing? You're never going to save all these starfish." And she says, "But I made a difference to that one." And you never know who that starfish is going to be, right? They could be the next RGB, they could be the next whoever. And so how are you creating that change? And even sometimes in our sadness of the now and the disappointment of the now, of feeling like we can't leave our houses or we can't be with our people, we can still stay connected. And so changing your energy into action and figuring out how best to do that through organizations, through whether it's, registering people to vote, whether it's having conversations, whether it's getting involved in different groups. How are you? We have this gift of time right now that we may never get back. And we see how the earth is healing because we're giving her a rest. We see how we're healing because we're giving ourselves a rest. How are you using this unique time that we're in to still push the things that you care about forward? And that is something that you can do at any time. And you will start to see that when you're moving in that direction, it will start to change your point of view, and it'll start to change your perspective. And the other thing is, this is the time to lean in to your village and lean into people and lean into making those connections with people. The most loaded question I think you can ask anybody today is, how are you doing? Sometimes I'm like, wait, how much time do we have in this meeting? Hold on, do you really want to know how I'm doing? My new favorite is I'm hanging in there. Someone else in a meeting the other day said, my basic needs are being met, which I thought was beautiful. I was like, some days just my basic needs are being met, right? But how are you leaning into that? And so when you ask that question, how are you really making a connection with that person and saying, no, tell me how you're really feeling. Misha, how are you really feeling today? And listening and saying, I'm here for you. Lillian, how are you feeling today? And I'm here for you, right? How are you making those connections? Because this is the time to do that and the time to ask for help. And then the last thing I'll say is, going back to my last point about expectation being the road to disappointment. I think that we have no idea how long we're going to be in this thing, y'all, right? We have no idea. We have no idea what even normal looks like anymore, right? I remember at the beginning I bought like 6 face masks, and I was like, these are way too many face masks. I don't know what I'm gonna do with these things in like 3 months. Now I have like 25 face masks. So, but how are we, even things like buy yourself a glittery face mask, bring joy to the things that are holding us back. Like, how are you bringing it and embracing it and then changing your perspective around it? So I will open it up for questions, because I know, again, I'm looking at the time. What questions might you have?
It always takes a brave soul to ask the first question. So I'm going to have Julia and Karis have prepped a couple of interactive questions for us. And Lourdes, just thank you so much. This is great. And I know we still have some time, and we're going to make this interactive. So be brave and be bold. Type in the chat. You can come off mute. You don't even have to turn on your camera, or you could turn on your camera. Whatever.
They actually say the bravest person is the second person, because the first person could just be crazy. It's the second person that joins in that starts the movement. I'm just saying. So,
hey, there you go. I like that.
I'll go ahead and be the crazy one if that's cool. What would you say has been the thing that's helped you on a daily basis, whether that's to stay motivated or, in your daily life? If you'd like to share that with us. Like, as college students, I feel like motivation is definitely something that I'm struggling with personally. And I think you're talking with us today. I feel like you've given us perspective on the world as a whole. And I think that's something that I'll definitely take with me today. So thank you so much for your words. They're so inspiring. Is there anything that you could share with us that's helped you? Is it just that world perspective or anything else?
I mean, I think it's all the things. I think that, I mean, again, having kids is, there's no better motivator because they don't care. There's never a sick day from being a parent, raising another person that is, you know, dependent on you. But I think that, I think for me, what keeps me motivated, again, is just finding the joy, like every day. How do I find the joy? Whether it's, you know, I was just thinking about, it's about to be winter, and the sun brings me the greatest joy. I may have grown up in Ohio and been born here, but I have tropical blood, and like the idea of like a dark, cold winter without being hostage in my house, I will come undone. So I'm just thinking about like from now until the very last day of you know, the very last nice day, I just want to see the people that I love, you know, whether that's like a walk in the park or a walk around the neighborhood, or depending upon the comfort level of the person I'm seeing, like how can I connect with all those people to fill up my cup for what's going to be ahead. And also just, you know, you have to understand and be honest with yourself about the things that you need, and you have to take the time to do those things. And if no one's given you permission to do that before, I'm giving it to you now. Like self-care, especially now, is, I don't know how you make it without that, right? And so not taken to an extreme, but in a balanced way, like whether that's, I can't do one more call today, I have to take a step back. I need to call this person. I'm going to have the one more donut. I'm going to, you know, have another glass of wine. Whatever it is that you need to do to self-care, I'm going to buy that pretty whatever and walk around my house with it. I don't care. Like whatever it is, you need to do that. And that's how I think that you create that balance, because, you know, there's that famous MLK quote about like, only, what is it, light, I'm gonna have to like look up the quote, light can't drive out, only light can drive out darkness, only love can drive out darkness, right? Like it's, to me, it's the same idea of like, you know, the joy can drive out the darkness. And so that's where you really create that balance. Other questions?
I think we had a couple of questions we were going to ask the group to at least engage in the chat.
Yeah. I think with the theme of the event, what is one thing you all hope to really make an impact on this year? It could be something as simple as your mental health. It could be as simple as the people around you. Maybe you've had a passion for something you haven't reached towards, maybe learning an instrument. What is something you hope to make an impact on in 2020 and being resilient towards?
I know someone has to have a burning question as you're answering Karis's question in the chat. This is an open floor.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say your comment about the little opportunities are things that you take advantage of was very telling, and also about your whole story. And also that's something that we can all remember, because the little things make the difference. And we have to be appreciative of everything. So thank you.
Thank you, Lillian.
All right, Julie or Karis, any more questions that you wanted to ask?
I guess one thing, Lourdes, is what is one way as a student then we can really stay engaged within the community and campus, especially in this time? Someone just put a comment down there. Making a positive impact on the lives I'm around this year. It's been a tough year, and I just want to be there to be a bright spot. That's awesome. Is it Alicia? I can't know if I say your name right.
Alicia.
Alicia.
It's
Okay.
Alicia.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. Yes. So what would it look like as a student? What is one goal we could have to really try to stay engaged on campus and within our community?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think that this is any different than, in the before times when when we did wild and crazy things. I got into, went to events and talked to people in person. I mean, I don't think that it would be any different than what you would do then, is like look for those opportunities and those organizations that will fill your cup and that you're passionate about. I think that now is especially the time, like, to me, I think there's so many things to be angry about or disappointed about on a daily basis. So to me, every day I'm like, all right, so what am I going to do about it? And now, granted, I can only do but so much, right? But what is the thing that, for me, I'm driven by this election. I've been trying to register people to vote, like doing the text calls, doing, what are the other things that I can be doing? Holding conversations, doing other things. And so I think, look for those opportunities for the things that you care about, especially now, because I think that that's where you create that balance. So it's not just like, I think now, especially, listen, let's be real. 5 something on a Wednesday is a rough time. So I know people might be doing 5 other things while you're on the Zoom call. I do it all the time. So we're juggling a lot. We're here a lot. So I think, again, in the before times, it was easier to be like, I'm going to pop by this thing or do this, whatever. I think about all the times that I intentionally did not spend my time in places with people or things that I cared about. And now I feel like I give myself more of an option. Like, I'm not even trying to deal with this person today, so I'm not gonna, right? I've given myself the permission to not do that. And so I think in this space and forum, if there's something for us to take away, it's that, right? So think about the places and the spaces where you want to be and you want to spend your time and the energy that you have, and go deep into those things, because again, then it's going to feel like you're making progress, and it's going to bring you joy, and it's going to bring you true connection with people and things. Then, just, I feel like where we were before, making choices just because they were there, like now we can be super deliberate about what they are.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Hearing you speak is so inspiring, and hearing your stories and experiences. I know we had one of the person, or 2 people. So Lillian said, I'm trying in making a difference this year by reminding those around me to be open-minded and understanding of all of our differences. That's awesome. Yes. I think it's like you're talking about creating that space. Jason said, how do you confront naysayers who say, I just don't get why they are here?
Naysayers to me are like, when people are like, don't read the comments in whatever, in the newspaper, online stories, whatever. I always read the comments, which is terrible, and you really should save yourself. Don't read the comments. To me, naysayers are like the comments, right? And so it's funny because as much as I could be here and be like, don't listen to them and don't da-da-da, I listen to them, and sometimes it hurts, and sometimes I take it in, and it is deflating. And I think we all do that to some level, or at some point they're going to break you down for whatever reason, right? It's going to be the wrong day, something's not going to hit right, whatever's going to happen. I think that this is, again, where you have to lean in to your village and your people. Like, this is the time and the space. Like, there are some days where I am deflated by people. Like, sometimes people will show you the worst of them, or I'm just whatever it may be, whatever that emotion is. And that's when you need to go to the other people you know, you need to lean into your people to help you out and tell you you're not crazy and this isn't okay. And they need to like give you that pep talk, right? I think, I don't know how you, I don't know how you make it today without those people around you, right? Without, you know, whether it's your family, your friends, your chosen family, you know, whoever it is, like, again, those are the folks who are going to continuously sustain you. And there has to come a point in time where, you know, if people aren't doing that, that you're cutting them out the same way that you would those naysayers, right? I think that this is a time, you know, and I said this before, like, people are questioning everything people are thinking and feeling, and they can get in your head, and you can start to think, it's interesting, we're at our organization, we're doing a lot of equity work, and there's a story about that people talk about a lot with equity work, where there's a fox, and the fox is walking by this pond, and he sees two fish, and he says to the fish, hey, how's the water? And the fish look at each other and they're like, what's water? Because we swim in things every day, and we don't even realize the things that we're swimming in or the things that we're taking in and believing, right? And so you have, and every day we get gaslighted by different things. And so you have to have those people that center you, and you have to be centered in the things that you believe in order to push past all of that noise.
That was a great response. Maggie, if you want to put up, so we were so happy to have you guys join us in this virtual world now. We have an event coming up. It's a month from today, actually. I think it's the third week of October, Wednesday, October 24th. So this was really focusing on making an impact and how to stay resilient. And we really want to focus on, well, what does that look like? What does your community look like? So we're going to have a panelist of local Westerville businesses and hear from them about the community and how we can be connected and stay connected with them. Again, we can put Julia's email in the chat. If you want to shoot her an email, say you're interested, you could be included in all the events we're hosting this year. Thank you, Julia. Awesome. And as well as what that could look like for nonprofit board certification and making a difference in your community and sitting on the things you're passionate about. And that's, you know, so broad. It's not just limited to business. I think that's all we really had. But.
And I know we are at time. Mars did ask a question about self-care. Lourdes, if you want to give like a 30-second, along with self-care and leaning into your village, what advice would you give someone who's come to the realization that they need to change their village?
Oh, Mars, this is such a painful question. I think that's incredibly difficult and incredibly hard. And I think that, you know, the people who love you and are there for you will be there at the end of the day. And the people who don't, or the people who are causing you harm, you have to love yourself enough to let them go. And that's incredibly difficult. And there's going to be a rebuilding period. I talked about mourning at the beginning of this conversation, and throughout life, I think we only think of mourning in the most literal sense of when we literally lose someone, like to death. We don't often talk about the mourning of friendships and people. And when you come to an understanding, you know, I often think it's like that, like, you know, whether it's your parent or big brother or somebody in your family who you like idolize and you think that they're a superhero, and then you start to see their flaws and you start to see they are not the person that you think that they were. And I'm not talking about to the most extreme, like they are total opposite, but you start to understand like their own mortality, like they are not everything that you made them up to be, or that your values don't align, or that they don't agree with the things that you do. And it is painful and challenging to shed yourself of that skin. And it is, that's where you have to, you know how we tell kids, like, look for the helpers, right? Mr. Rogers used to always say, like, look for the helpers in your community. That's where you need to look for your helpers. Like, who are the people who can help you through that process? And then you rebuild. And that's the most honest answer, because there is no, in order to truly love yourself, you have to put people who are causing you harm at a distance in order to protect you, because no one is going to love you as much as you love you.
That's great. And I have two quotes that I'd like to share in closing that I captured during your presentation, Lourdes, and this was wonderful and very inspirational. So two things to share that I documented here. So the first one on resiliency, there's no guarantee of what's on the other side of the journey. Resiliency is the ability to push through and pursue an opportunity on the other side that's better than where you are. And just to repeat it, because it came out of her mouth over to you, fill up your cup. If no one's given you permission to do that, you were given permission today. So make sure to do that and focus on you and self-care and its importance. So thank you very much. If you have your little clap symbol, or if you want to come off of mute and give a little woo woo, we need a little bit of that in our lives too. So thank you very much. And thank you to Julie and Karis for your coordination.
And also, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, so happy to connect if y'all want to. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.